Jimmy Kimmel Live! Jimmy's guest tonight from Angel David Orianes, comedian Jeff Garcia, a Cinco de Mayo shower, music from Ozone Motley, and this week's co-host, Patton Oswalt. I'm your production assistant, Hayden Mauk, and here's Jimmy Kimmel!
So I'm not going to have the same level of excitement that you have, but here I'm going to give a stab at your full production credits here. You're an Emmy Award-winning television producer. You've produced and directed thousands of hours of network programming across a 20-year career. Producing and credits include Hell's Kitchen, Kitchen Nightmares, Fresh Fried and Crispy, America's Most Musical Family, Undercover Boss, American Ninja Warrior, Top Gear USA, American Idol, Cesar 911, Full Throttle Saloon. Directing credits include Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern, The Zimmern List, Crash Test World, What's Eating America, Ghost Brothers Haunted House Guest. Recently, you've been directing Andrew Zimmern on Family Dinner, and you've just finished another pilot with him. Is there anything else that I missed in that huge array of things you've done?
No, I worked with, as you can see, I got my start with Jimmy Kimmel. I ended up on the Adam Carolla show, and, it all just kind of snowballed into one big career.
So you hinted at it later in that clip. Did you initially go out to LA for acting?
I did. I went out. So I took acting classes to be a better public speaker because I got a degree in biology and I thought I was going to go to vet school or become maybe a pharmaceutical sales rep or who knows. And I took the acting classes because I was bored and I always had the idea of I wanted to get in entertainment. And I was in Nashville helping my grandparents because I was actually a farmer for a couple of years after I got my degree. And I said, this is fun. I want to do it. And I actually got a job in pharmaceutical sales. And the day I was supposed to show up, I didn't show up. And they called me freaking out. And they said, hey, where are you? And I go, you know what? I can't sell my soul to the devil. This isn't for me. So they're like, well, we went through this whole process for 6 months. And I go, yeah, sorry, bud. Like, not my thing. And the guy was super pissed. And I go, thank you. And just hung up. And my buddy called me a week later and said, my company's moving me to Newport Beach. And they're paying for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And do you want to come out? You always said you wanted to go to LA. And I go, yeah. What's it going to cost me? He goes, groceries. So I go, that's it? And he goes, yeah, all the rent's paid for. Just come out and you can pay groceries and we can figure it out. Wow. So that's what got me to LA. And I gave the acting to, I was like, I wanted to act. Maybe backup plan was get into underwater cinematography or something with, my biology degree. And it just kind of all snowballed from there.
God, it was meant to be. What was where did the transition happen from that acting bug? Obviously, production assistant on Jimmy Kimmel, you're obviously trying to get the foot in the door there. What was the first kind of itch that you were like, oh shit, I can be behind the scenes. I can produce this. I can direct this. Where did that start?
Well, it started on Kimmel. Like the thing about Kimmel, I got hired as a full ABC contract. And so I was, blue card, the silver pass for all Disney, all the discounts, full health, medical, dental, 401k. And I was doing it as a production assistant. And they asked me to work in the field department because I'm a people person. And they started letting me produce and AP a bunch of segments and bits. And while I was there, every about 3 or 4 weeks, I would also get an acting gig on Kimmel. So it was like this sort of cool marriage of like seeing how it all works. Yeah. And then also getting to play in front of the camera. And, I got an agent. I took more acting classes. I did a little bit of everything. I just realized like it's easier to make shit happen on your own and not wait for somebody to do it for you. So like even with the agents, they'd call and they'd be like, yeah, well, maybe at something, maybe I won't. And, I was like, screw it. I'll just go figure it out. And I got to pay my bills. Like LA is not cheap. So I figured that once I left Kimmel and went to the Carolla show, the late night show, I made the jump from PA to AP. And then I was a field coordinator / AP there. And it just sort of snowballed.
So this may be a hard thing to answer, but I mean, that's kind of what we're here for. What do you think about either your work ethic, your personality, your eye, your perspective it seemed like that, like you said, it snowballed, that you really caught on pretty quickly. What aspect of you do you think allowed that to happen so quickly? There's tons of people that go to LA and they just squander. They can't get anywhere.
Well,
what made you different?
Well, I think anybody can make it in LA. I'm going to throw it out there right now. Like, anybody can make it if you're willing to work. The thing that really worked for me is I went out. Like, my first job actually was on an IMAX film. I got hired as a PA from somebody I met the second day I was in LA. And they go, "Hey, do you want to be a PA?" I go, "I don't know what that is." Sure. Right. And they go, "Well, we need somebody on Tuesday. Are you available?" And I go, "Yeah, I've got no job. I just moved here." They're like, "Well," they actually asked Monday. And I go, "My brother's going to the airport. I can't do Monday, but I can do Tuesday." They're like, "All right, we'll hire you for 2 days." And I go, "You don't have to pay me. I don't know what I'm doing." So it's like, I can just come and work. And having been a farmer before that, I would spend 14 hours a day on a tractor in Nashville, cutting hay or working with cattle or whatever. And I was like, going out to LA, getting an office job, like being on a movie set, that's kind of cool. So I got the job. And after 2 days, the other PA that was still sick that they didn't like said I needed 2 weeks. So my 2 days became 2 weeks, became 7 months. And on my third month in LA, in the middle of the IMAX film, they go, "Hayden, you could be a 1960s milkman. Do you want to be in the film?" And I go, "Okay." Like, I didn't know. I said, "Okay." So I find myself on the Universal backlot 3 months into living in LA, wearing a white 1960s milkman outfit with a crate of milk, walking down the street. And it's like a glorified extra beat where I'm just bouncing to the music, and I walk up and I knock on a door and that's it. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Right. And then I left that to do some stand-in work. And, I got a SAG card. I did all that. And then I was like, I kind of need to make money kind of full time now. And I went and worked at the LA Zoo for 2 years while I was still doing stand-in work. So I was doing stand-in work 4 days a week and 3 days a week doing the zoo. And then it kind of rotated where there was a budget crunch, couldn't do the zoo stuff. And my friend called that same week and said, "Do you want to come work on Jimmy Kimmel? I know you don't really want to be a PA, but we'll, come on and work with us." And I go, "Sure." And they said it's a new late night talk show called Jimmy Kimmel Live. So I started on the second test show and did it for 2.5 years and just kind of worked my way up from there.
Jeez. And I mean, another quick thing about like what aspect of it that really kind of like, do you think drew you into it? Was it being in front of it, like making, was it creating, seeing the final product, the process?
It's being a storyteller. That's all it is. The entire thing, whether you're in front or back, you're a storyteller. Yeah. And I can trace my entire career to saying yes. And the yes is like, want to try that? Sure. Whether I liked it or not? Sure. I've only ever quit one job in LA. And I got on the show when I was between Kimmel and Corolla. I had 5 weeks off or something. And I took a job on the show Rockstar, the Mike Burnett show Rockstar. And I was supposed to be a coordinator. And I showed up and they're like, "Oh, you're a PA, but you're going to be a grip today." And I go, "Wait, what?" So I did 2 days of that. And I go, "You know what, guys? The guy that hired me left. Like, this all seems like bullshit. So I'm out." And, I realized, like, I know my worth. I know my value. I know what I signed up for, but I will also stand up for myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's still yes. The answer is say yes and figure out what you want to do.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a few questions pop up in the Q&A. There's a few things we want to tick off, and then we'll kind of open it up to some more questions.
Sure.
So we're jumping ahead a little bit here, but obviously this discussion is relevant to Madison, relevant to the Madison community, because you're based here, you're working out of here, you're traveling. Mm-hmm. After your LA stint, what brought you back here? Or here, maybe not even back, where were you before, but what brought you here and why are you here?
My wife. So my wife worked in broadcast standards and practices at Fox. So that's the censor. She's the one with the hand on the live button for live events or anything that could be findable or objectable by the FCC. So she was doing that for 10 years, got tired of doing that and wanted to get in children's content. So she got a job doing the same thing at Mattel. So she did 2 years at Mattel or 3 years at Mattel and realized it wasn't as creative there. It was about selling plastic.
Yeah.
So plastic toys and whatnot. And she goes, I kind of want to go back to school and get a PhD. So she applied to a bunch of places. I go, yeah, that's fine. If you want to give up $100,000 a year job, fine. But let's make it worthwhile. Let's not get more debt for student loans or anything. And Madison, UW said, yeah, come on out. We'll pay for you to go here. We're going to, your experience and whatnot is different than most students. And we'd love to have you. And we said, screw it. Let's pack up and go to Madison and just see what happens. Again, saying yes.
Yeah. When was this?
2017.
2017. Yeah. So it didn't necessarily coincide with it because a lot of people shifted during the pandemic, working remotely and that sort of thing. This was well before.
Nope, that's it. We came out just because we're like, the opportunity presented itself. I had been working with Andrew Zimmern's company for 3 years. They're based out of Minneapolis. Yeah. So it doesn't matter anymore where you live. So that's the big thing. You can live anywhere once you develop, make a name for yourself. Now, let me rephrase that. If you can live in cities that have a thriving television industry or feature film industry and make your name there. And now with everybody trying to hire locals to do things, you can go to Staff Me Up or Mandy.com or Production Hub or any of those. Get your name out there, or even if there's a like an LA 411 or whatever's local to the city and the state you're in, and even just the film board, and have your stuff listed and you can get hired.
So what's your experience been like working out of Madison? Have you bumped into many of us in the production community here, or are you just at the airport all the time?
No, a little bit. What's funny is like Steve moved in. We live in the same neighborhood, and the chances of two people from LA moving into the same neighborhood are fairly small, especially across the country in the Midwest. But no, I bumped into some people that have companies here. The thing that I'll be honest about, like I did a lot of outreach when I first moved here to different production companies, and I didn't get returned emails or calls. It was really kind of interesting because I was like, hey, I'm here. I'm here to network. Like I want to meet people. And I didn't get a lot of phone calls. So I just kept taking jobs in LA. And, I have worked with one local production company to do some children's programming. And that's it.
Well, it's interesting because there's, other cinematographers and other people that work out of Madison that have a really national reach that, they travel all the time, and then they're very grateful to land a Madison gig because they don't have to travel. Because, even, from my side of it, owning a company, we get in our circle, we get our clients, we get our rhythm, we know the process. It's hard to, just kind of reach out and bring, especially at the top level, bring other people in that we're, handling ourselves all the time. So on to a little bit of advice. Let's check off the advice checkbox, and then we can kind of get into the fun nitty gritty of all the shows and all the stuff you've done. But I think one thing, and it's been mentioned in the chat, is say yes, sure, be open to it, figure out, a work ethic is 90, if not 98% of getting anywhere in the industry. What other kind of advice would you kind of give to people kind of not necessarily even wanting to go directly on your path, but kind of breaking into the industry in general?
You start as a PA. I mean, I've got a degree in biology. I never went to film school. I never did any of that. It is a trade. If you want to get into cinematography, if you want to get into producing, if you want to get into directing, you got to start at the bottom. I don't care if you went to film school. I don't care what your grades were. I will hire people all day long, even if they're green, and say, hey, do you want a job? Do you want to come, do this? We can train people up. We can get people into positions to tell me, like, once you start doing this, if you're there to work and you're not a problem, we're more than happy to help give people the leg up. Like if you go, hey, Hayden, I really want to kind of get into cinematography. What do I do? Well, be a PA with us a couple of times, then we'll see if we can make you a PA in the camera department. So then you can become an AC, and from an AC move up to B cam or C cam, and then move up to A cam and DP and things. You'll develop the skills by just doing. And if that's the world you want to go into cinematography, and pick up a camera, shoot. If somebody goes, hey, are you able to shoot? Let me show you some stuff. show us what you got, and then go, okay, now I can take a chance. Like, I'm not going to hire you to DP my show if I don't know you and you don't have a lot of credits, but I will hire you to B cam or C cam or AC.
And, from my experience in working with a lot of people like that stand out that,
right.
I would even add that I don't think you need a lot of patience if you're that kind of hard worker. Like, this isn't a 10-year long grind. Like, if you're a hard worker, you will climb quickly in these
100%.
industry and in these production circles.
100%. So here's where my biggest mistake when I was working at Kimmel, when I first started, is I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to do some acting. I like the idea of cinematography. I like the idea of directing and producing, but I didn't know immediately. So I kind of bounced to different departments. And I never told people exactly what I wanted to do. Now, like, if I get new people that are fresh or people that are like been PAing for a year and they kind of have an idea of where they want to go, I encourage you, tell people straight up, like, I'm really interested in this. And if you have a good work ethic and you're a joy to be around on set and you can help solve problems, you're going to get those opportunities.
Yeah. So a question from the chat that we can tick off before we kind of get into some of your reality television work. And you've mentioned it in some correspondence, but what are your aspirations or upcoming work outside of reality television? Okay. Where's your head at with that?
So my wife and I and mother-in-law are currently producing and pitching a scripted series on Faye Emerson. It's a woman that was the original late night talk show host in the 1949, 1950, 51. So when the advent of television, she created the genre that you see today.
Wow.
She is the person that created brought in the couch, the living room. Here's what we do. And the thing is, nobody's heard of her. She's been relegated to the past. And what happened is, and what makes it so interesting is my wife, discovered her here at UW. When she died, she had one son who then left all of her belongings and all of the kinescopes for her show at the UW Madison Historic Archives. Wow. My wife was looking for something to write a paper on for, I don't remember which journal, but we found her and we're like, holy shit, like, this is a show. This could be a cross between like Miss America, Mrs. America, and the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, because it fits that time period, it fits that world. So we developed a whole show around that where we pitched CBS. We had a buyer's agreement or shopping agreement with a company called 219 Productions, who just did the new Star Wars film out of LA. Does a lot of animation. Mm-hmm. And we then pitched it to CBS, and we got it on. We're on deadline, and we're continuing to develop it. CBS ultimately passed because also they want us to do an unscripted series first, because right now CBS looks like the bad guy for letting this woman fall through the cracks and not be acknowledged. So they're like, if we could do an unscripted series, so like a 5 or 6 or 7 part docu-series, then we can put her back into the lexicon and then develop a scripted series around it from there.
Wow. Without any spoilers, is there a lot of what's her personality type? What's her life? What's her background outside of the breakthrough that she had with television?
So the amazing thing was she was a starlet as an MGM contract actress. Yeah. She was discovered by Howard Hughes. And she married Elliot Roosevelt of the Roosevelt family, Eleanor and FDR's son. And and she was a feminist before that was a thing. She was this sexy woman that had big breasts and wore V-neck shirts. So that that was extremely brilliant. But what was interesting is when they realized the power of late night TV, sexism showed, and they tried to relegate her by saying she put the V in TV, and you only talked about her looks instead of her brains because she went against the conventional norm. And as late night developed, they being the men that ran CBS, wanted to move her to daytime, where women were put to help sell products to housewives as TV became a thing. So,
is that where she ended up?
No, the reason the reason you don't know who she is she basically said, when I'm done, yeah, exactly. I'm moving to Spain and you're never going to hear from me again. And that's what happened. So she had the first big sponsor on network TV for late night, anything after 9 o'clock, because the TV used to go off. Yeah. She got a 9 o'clock show that was sponsored by Pepsi. Wow. So Pepsi was put into every single episode where they'd have like the Pepsi Cola moment or whatever. She ended up ultimately dying of stomach cancer from too much Pepsi.
Oh, so that's an awesome story. So let's get back on track and cover some.
Yeah, sorry, I'm long-winded. So everybody, apologies.
I'm asking follow-ups, so it's very, very warranted, and it's a fascinating story. Rich, let's hit that undercover boss clip, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the background on some of these shows. And unmute yourself before you go, too.
New Friday.
It's a symbol of unity and love.
The tribal chairman of Mohegan Sun Casino goes all in.
Maybe I'll shave my eyebrow.
Your eyes are a dead giveaway.
On the most extreme makeover in undercover boss history. But can he fool?
I'm trying to avoid all eye contact with him.
His very own son.
I thought he was going to look at me and say, Dad.
But wait till you see.
Hey, you got some money?
The big reveal.
He's going to be very shocked.
A new Undercover Boss, CBS Friday, 8/7 Central.
So one of the first things I want to ask is, and even watching these shows, especially kind of the newer Netflix dating, all that shit, is they're always presented as if they're writing themselves. Like, this is how the world unfolded. We just set up a premise, and this is all the amazing stuff that came out of it. How much work do you put in to telling these stories on this show or any of the reality television that you do?
So I think first I want to start with reality is a catch-all phrase for unscripted TV. And unscripted TV can be broken down into reality television like the Kardashians and that kind of crap, which is truly a scripted docuseries. Then you have a docuseries, a docu-follow, and documentary, right? So the docuseries, you will have an idea and a premise when you come into the show. You'll know, I need to hit these beats. These are what when I've done my pre-interview with the families, because or whoever it is that I'm talking to, I pre-interview everybody. I spend a week getting to know them on the phone. I tell them kind of expectations for filming. And then you go and you know that you're going to do the interviews. And the interviews, I've got maybe 35 questions that are going to take me an hour and a half to get through, because I need to get the emotional connection to whatever the questions are that I'm asking, right? And then we build our show the next day of us filming on that. So it's like, you say that this is what you do here. We want to see that. But if it's a host-driven show, I will not tell a host that, so that we have organic moments, so that I can pull the strings like a puppet master behind the scenes to be like, Daniel, when you were telling me about the first time you picked up a camera, can you tell me that? Can you tell that story to the host right now? But then I'll say, hey, whoever the host is, can you ask Daniel about the first time he picked up a camera? So I know what's going to happen. I know where the story is going to go. I know how I can get a beginning, middle, and end. But because somebody that doesn't know is asking the question, it usually becomes much more dynamic. And if it doesn't, I can then reproduce that to make it more dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and something like Undercover Boss like that.
Series. I'm sorry.
Something like Undercover Boss, do the disguises always like that premise? Does that always hold up? Or does it sometimes like they walk in somewhere and they're like, oh, hey, you're the CEO. Nice to see you.
So the truth is, how many employees actually know the CEO of their company?
Yeah.
Right? How many of them ever have FaceTime with the CEO of their company? Almost none. And that show, for the record, is the hardest show I have ever done, because here's the way I did it. I have to talk. I was the only person that the employees ever talked to from production, ever. So I would have to tell the employees, I would have to convince them to sign a NDA about a new show that we were doing that had language in it that said I could lie to them, right? So then until they signed that NDA and appearance release, I couldn't tell them anything about the show. So then once they signed it, I had to tell them that we were doing a different show, a fake show. So I had to, like the one I use for Mohegan Sun is, we're doing a show called The Entrepreneur. The Entrepreneur is like every other reality show where there's 3 judges. They are going to judge contestants who are competing for $500,000 to start their own. They get the seed money to start their own business. So they would say, well, then what does that have to do with me? I go, what they have to do is they have to write a business plan. Best business plan, actionable business plan is going to be are going to help the contestant win. You're going to get a contestant that's going to learn your aspect of a business. So they're not thinking just big picture. They're thinking, oh, what does every little department in a company do? So now I've convinced the employees that they're on our side to help their contestant win. Right?
Wow.
So I go, but to do that, I've got to convince you to tell personal stories so they understand what people actually feel that are doing these jobs, what hardships they face, how much money they make, like where they fall in the scope of the company, and then how the company affects their lives, and then what their lives actually are. So people open up because now I've got them to open up to me. So I'm like, look, we've all been tight on money. Like, tell me, like, what happens if you're the valet at the Mohegan Sun and you don't get enough tips? What happens, right? And it's like, well, I've had that experience before. So then you get them talking, and all you got to do is shut up and listen, because 90% of the time people just want to talk. They just want to tell their story. And from there, it's not, you don't manipulate it, but then I get all the information I need so that a different producer who's handling the CEO, they give them enough information to ask questions. They don't give them all the information. Yeah. So the part that makes it so hard is I've got to say and ask questions in a way that they're applicable to Undercover Boss, but it's for the show The Entrepreneur, right? Yeah. So it's really, really difficult. And the part that's the most difficult is when you do the reveal, right? When you take them and they meet the boss. Because I'm talking to these people, I get to know them. I'm doing all the interview questions with them. I do all of that. So I'm like laughing with them, crying with them, doing the whole thing. Like, you've got to be an emotional sponge for that show. Yeah. And by the time they go to meet the boss and they get $10,000, $20,000, college paid for, whatever it is, first thing that usually happens is they walk over to me afterwards because I've got to do exit interviews. Like on the spot with like an ITM, right? Does everybody know the difference between an OTF and an ITM? Like an OTF is like you're setting up an interview as to sum up what just happened. And ITM is in the moment. So I need it in the moment. What are they feeling? Right? Still an interview. So I do an ITM right there on the spot. Like, I get to be set up because they're emotionally raw. Yeah. And 90% of the time they walk over and either hug me or punch me. Right? Because you just change their life. There's a lot of times they punch you and then hug you. Yeah. And then you get that interview, and you're going through 7 people that day. 6 make the show, and like they're crying, you're crying, because you see this visceral emotional response to that moment. And then as soon as they're done, they got to go to psychiatric evaluation to make sure that like they can process what just happened. Yeah. And then I got to reset and do it all over again 5 more times. So it's like, it is emotionally draining. Like 2 days later, you're emotionally raw, Yeah.
Well, how many days do the reveals cover? One day or 2?
One day.
So you're
doing
dead
all that in one day. Wow.
Well, I mean, that covers one of my, I was going to ask what's one of the more difficult shows you do. And that really sounds like the, and now do you say it's one of the more difficult because the logistics of it, or because of that tax?
Logistics aren't as hard. It's keeping straight what you need to do to like make sure you're getting the content and you're not tipping them off. And to answer your previous questions, every now and then somebody will be like, what if this is Undercover Boss? So I will immediately parry that with, I'm like, wouldn't that be awesome? If it was Undercover Boss, like we'd be on an Emmy Award-winning show. Like that would be so rad. I would love to be Undercover Boss. And they're like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. So they're like, oh yeah, I guess, yeah, it's not. But we use fake names. So we use fake names so they couldn't IMDb us. So, but that was really difficult from an emotional and producing standpoint. And a really tricky show to do as far as just difficult for production would have been like Caesar 911. Like Caesar 911 was a show where you have a man who's watching dogs that could do anything. And he was also very right brain. So like Caesar, unbelievable with animals, but he can't necessarily always put it into a very clear thought process for what he's going to do, because he doesn't know until the dog does something. So you might film the dogs for 2 hours, and at minute 10, you get the setup you need. And then at minute 82, you actually get around to the point of doing what he said he was going to do. So I would do the interviews, watch that, and then have to go back to post and pull all that crap together, and all that wasted footage you just throw out.
Jeez.
So yeah, that would be a docu-follow. So that's not really a docu-series. That's a docu-follow, because you really don't know what's going to happen.
Wow. Real quick, we can actually play a clip from Caesar 911. But what's your favorite fake name that you've used?
Oh, I don't know what I use. I use Travis something. My middle name's Travis, and it was Travis. I don't remember what last name I used, but I can tell you some fun celebrity fake names. Like anytime Chris Rock checks into a hotel, he's Clubber Lane from Blocky.
Awesome. Here, let's show the quick clip of Caesar 911 with another celebrity in it.
She definitely seemed nervous.
I thought any dog likes who their owner is, assuming the owner is basically functioning. I was wrong.
Foxy and I have a good relationship, but she has no interest in being friends with Jerry whatsoever.
Fox, come here, Fox.
The minute Jerry tried to go near her, she would just, run away or hide.
You go over to her to be nice to her, to pet her, and she takes off. Foxy, come here. Come here. Come here.
Watch this. Okay. No.
Okay.
No.
Well, the pupils are very dilated. Yeah, so she's terrified. Yeah.
So, first question: what does the dog know that we don't know about Jerry Seinfeld?
What? It always comes down to the owners. What they know is he has no idea how to interact with animals. And that's exactly what comes through. Like, they get the dogs. He was on the road. He had he had just finished his shows. He was doing whatever he was doing at that point. But by the time you come home, the problem was the wife would always pick the dog up. Every time you pick the dog up, you're reinforcing the insecurities. And that was the big thing. So then that's something that snowballs. So it's like, and what I've learned through all that is like, it's every single time it's the owners, not the animal. So
yeah. Well, and plus Seinfeld always seems like somebody that is very good at specific things, and the rest of the world is just
right
weird to him because he's been in a bubble for so much of his life at this point. You answered it in the chat, but describe the size of your typical docu-follow crew and what those roles are.
Okay, so like the show I got off of last night, it's a pilot that we do that is a spin-off of the show Family Dinner. It's called Family Restaurant, and it's for Magnolia Network. You've got me, I'm directing, I'm producing, I'm writing. We've got a DP, A-cam, B-cam, or A-cam, sorry, the DP is A-cam. Then we have a B-cam who's also a DP level guy. C-cam does all food porn, hands, cutaways, things like that. Also a DP level guy, but it's just a fun crew. One sound, our host, production manager, and then we have, 2 PAs. So that's 9. We have 9 total people for that show. And that's exactly what we do for the other show as well, Family Dinner, with our host.
And what's the day range for these shows? I think you had mentioned your current pilot was either a day or 2, but what's some of the larger shows you've shot for just a half hour of television? What's the range?
For these shows, a lot of half-hour TV. So this show that I currently did, the one last night, and Family Dinner, and even those are 2 days. A day of interviews, B-roll, and any other whatever we need to happen that day, and then a full day with the host. So I can do a 24-minute show with our host, with 1 day of host and 1 day of B-roll and interviews. The other thing is like if I do another half-hour show, sometimes a half-hour show could just be a day. Like when we shot America's Most Musical Family, that's a 1-hour show per episode. That turned out to be 2 days per episode, and that was an hour.
Wow.
Because a lot of it was a stage show. Like we'd have a full day of stage performances. Day before is interviews, whatnot, rehearsals. And that's just what it was. Now for Bizarre Foods, it would take me 8 days. It would take a travel day, 3 days of B-roll doing the journey before Andrew did. So I knew exactly what would happen before the journey. 3 days with Andrew Zimmern, and then a day of B-roll on the back end, and then a travel day home. Wow. And that was for 1 hour, but that was a journey-based show, or just a travel log.
Wow. I mean, I guess that really explains why, they're so efficient and cheaper to make that's
completely. And if you have any stage show, they're going to amortize the stage over a course of a show. So when I did Hell's Kitchen, I did 10 seasons of Hell's Kitchen. We could do 2 seasons in about 12 weeks, 13 weeks. Only 8 weeks of which were production, actually producing. And we do 22 episodes per season, and they were broken down into 2-day and 1-day episodes for a 1-hour show. Wow. Based on, so it would be the dinner service anchored every episode. And there were some days that we'd have a challenge in the morning. We'd have a dinner service and elimination same day.
Wow. That's wild. Do you really sometimes do 2 seasons in one production run?
Absolutely. Because for Hell's Kitchen, it would cost $1.2 million to build a restaurant on a soundstage. Yeah. So if you could amortize it over the course of those 2 seasons, and halfway through, once you get past your first 4 weeks, so you do your season in 4 weeks, you have 2 weeks down, you're reloading for the next episode, and then you just change out some of the set deck to make it look like a new season.
Wow.
I got to ask about this production schedule. Are you daunted by the fact that you need to get this 30-minute show in a day or maybe 2 days? Now you have 3 cameras going and you've got very skilled DPs, right? So you're assuming that everything's being caught. You're not watching every shot go down.
I'm watching every shot. I've got a portable monitor that I'll either wear around my neck, or if it's a travel log show, I will wear, like I took a gun belt and shoulder thing, and I built a leather contraption to stick it in there so that we could run and gun as we needed.
Because you're saying run and gun, and in our small market, run and gun is like an evil term. But you're creating these shows that have great production value, great shots, great stories. They move very quickly. It seems like you have 10,000 shots per minute, the way that they move.
Right.
It's amazing.
So a lot of our shooters wear easy rigs. So that I hate sticks unless it's a really pretty long compressed shot. Like the sticks drive me crazy. We'll use the 17 to 120 Canon lenses for reality, but we've gotten away from that to go with the ingenues because they're faster, they're prettier. And as long as we have somebody in a wide and somebody in a long lens, we can move around as much as possible. And, we mic our main players, and we just have really, really skilled people. We'll do the day without the host. I mean, not for the shot you have up, but we'll do a day without the host. We get the entire flow, so we can cheat. We have the people wear the same clothes, so we can cheat. Hands, walking, smiles, the beauty of the show. And we'll compose them, but we don't need a long time.
Mm-hmm. Now you mentioned, DPs and so forth. I did, and sound. I didn't hear gaffer. I didn't hear grip. I mean, so where are those roles being filled in on a crew that's pretty tight?
All of us. So the DP, we're all doing it. Like we went into a restaurant, so yesterday we were in a restaurant that we could shoot 360, because a lot of our shows have to shoot 360. I mean, that's the deal, right? And we'll go in and we'll change every light out that we can. We've changed 42 4-foot long bulbs, the T12s to 4100, so that we could just be good to go. And then any place that was dead, we'd use the Aladdins to match. We were shooting 4300 in the restaurant, and it looks great. You throw those ingenue lenses on, and we were shooting on the FX or the F55s. We're going to the FX9s now because the production company owned the F55s, and we just run and gun.
Wow. Do you have a team that you like to work with, or does it? How much does your team vary from show to show?
Anybody. We have quite a few shooters around the country we work with. A lot of them are out of Minneapolis. A couple guys out of Boston. A couple guys out of two guys out of Germany. One guy out of Romania. A guy out of Taos, New Mexico. A couple guys out of LA. What I have found is all my union LA camera ops love coming out on the road with us because they get to be creative. Like if you're on a stage show, if you're literally on sticks working zones. Like just this is it. This is your entire day. Ninja Warriors that way. A lot of those shows are just that. They almost are like pet operators, right?
Yeah.
But we will work with it. If you're talented and you want to travel and you don't need to be babysat and you get what we're doing, like we'll take as many people, we'll take a ton of people with us, and we're always looking to add to that. Like we want people that want to travel, have fun. We don't have any divas. If you're a diva or a D-bag, we just don't call you back, and you may be a great shooter, but the kind of stuff that we do when we get in, like 2 days ago, I was up with the DP and B cam because we didn't have a utility or a swing or grip. So we went back in and relit the restaurant we were shooting in the way we wanted. And, I'll help sell. We'll just go through, I'll eyeball stuff. I'm like, can't use that. Let's get it out. We'll redact and go.
Wow. That's wild. So what's something that has surprised you most about the industry that either wasn't quite what you expected and you've done your most to kind of like your best to kind of counteract that, or something that has just surprised you that you're constantly fighting against?
There's a lot of people that have failed upward. There's a lot of opportunity to be really bad at your job and be an asshole and succeed. And you see a lot of it. And like I've worked with people when I was just a field producer, and there's story people coming out on the road with you, and they don't treat people like people. They're just characters in my story. And that they're writing in their head. And I think that's unfair. I think that's a disadvantage to the storytelling element, because if you're doing docu-follows, docu-series, let the people that you're filming with need to be who they are, right? And then the number of people that have failed upward and the number of network execs that have no idea how shit works. Like, wow. It's mind blowing.
Well, and I mean, I figured that has to be part of your skill set to do what you do. Is there has to be some sort of empathy to connect with these people that you're shooting with and filming with. The deeper your empathy, the more you're understanding, able to tell their story.
Right. Exactly.
If you don't have that.
I've had so many different life experiences that I have something that I can relate to anybody. Doesn't matter if you're red or blue state. Doesn't matter where you come from. If you have one thing in common with somebody and you're empathetic, you can do stuff for days,
So another question from Ryan Coe. I don't have a full name. Something you would go back and tell your younger self.
I would have picked up a camera sooner. Like, here's the two things. Watching through a monitor and, getting great shots is one thing. Picking up a camera, doing it yourself, and understanding composition. The better you understand that as a storyteller, the more rich the world is you create, right? And then the other is learn post. I was in the field for a long time. And then when we had our kids 10 years ago, I spent the end of that year, and I spent the next couple years in post, because I had done some post, but I just did exclusively post for 2 years so I could be home. And it made me a much better director, because you're thinking about the composition, what you need to tell the story, the cutaways, and any assets to help make it, a much better, much more visually stunning story.
Yeah. I mean, my path was specifically post into directing and producing. And I feel like it just came with certain shortcuts that you just kind of know what you need, you know what you don't. You can edit on the fly in your head, and it helps so much.
Oh, 100%. And even in our world, you may be editing on the fly, but then the story might change, and then you've got to adjust, because the biggest problem in docu-follows, documentaries, and docu-series are things will happen that you did not expect, and what you need to be able to is pivot in that position, be like, what do we have to support this story now?
Mm-hmm. So this might have to do with the hardware in the back, maybe not, but out of everything you've worked on, what one or two or several, what are you most proud of?
A show that I'm really proud of is What's Eating America. It's a show where we discussed politically hot topics with people around the country, like voter suppression, drug use, drug abuse, immigration reform. It was for MSNBC. They wanted to compete with CNN in the doc space. And it was with Andrew Zimmern, but it was something where it was true documentary storytelling, because we went in and we met these people. We had no idea what they were going to say. I mean, we talked about school lunch nutrition. We found a woman in Portland. I mean, we did a police ride along, and I put Osmos on the front of the vehicle. I put Osmos in the other one. I had Andrew Zimmern in the front. I had a shooter shooting French overs of the two talking from a police car. And this is a program that they had in Portland they didn't arrest drug addicts. They called counselors to come in to get them off the streets and try to help them get clean. And what was really amazing was we found a woman on the side of the road with a needle, warmed up, black tar heroin, ready to inject in her arm. And we did it all in real time, in reality, and got her a person to come and help, talk her off the street. She didn't shoot up at that moment. I mean, everybody else had shot up already, but like that was a real life moment where you're telling a real story that could not have been more raw. And the editing was great on that show, Steve.
Especially that segment, from what I recall.
I was going to ask.
I mean, Steve, you edited
I cut that one, yeah.
Random question. Yeah, tell us about the editor.
How long do you have? No, but Steve, you can speak to this. You can speak to how it was different than a lot of reality, a lot of unscripted stuff.
Yeah, what was cool is that it was just real, because so much reality TV is totally fake. But when you're looking at drug addicts and they're trying to help them in the moment, that's real.
Is that the closest to raw realism that you've gotten in your career?
I mean, that show, yeah. I mean, it was something that you would see on the news, but it wasn't shot as a news documentary. I think that's the thing that drives me crazy is news is 2-minute segments or 1.5-minute segments that they are going to shoot, cover with VO, and show the same 3 shots 5 times. And it drives me bonkers. And it's not, and you might tell a story, but it's not a visually stunning, interesting piece. And for that, we were able to take really talented people and really get in there and, tell that story. Yeah,
that's awesome. I'm sure there's more. Do you want to cover something else you're really proud of?
I mean, yeah, I was really proud of Bizarre Foods, because even though the name was really terrible, that was a network thing, we were doing cultural anthropology through food. We were able to share with people across every different ethnic divides, whatever country, whatever it is. When you sit at a table and somebody's feeding you, all the shit goes out the window and you get people's moments. And unfortunately, the company that did that show, it wasn't Zimmern's company, it was another company. They all came from news, so they cut it where you had a news shot every 2.5 seconds. You didn't let moments breathe. They just wanted to, just power through what the storytelling was. And we'd have 10 or 15 great stories, and they'd be like, let's cram them all in. And it's you don't have time in an hour to do that if you want to let it breathe. So there's a lot of stuff that hit the floor that was amazing. That could have been its own documentary, or could have been its own several act show.
That's the diners, drive-ins, and dives approach.
Yes, exactly.
Just keeps hitting you in the head with food porn, and then another shot.
Yep.
Well, and
I mean, that
Bizarre
was all
Foods is,
reality. When I was on Kitchen Nightmares and we'd change our shots about every 2.5 minutes or 2.5 seconds. Like it'd be really quick. It was the power of editing for that show. You'd edit. You'd be like, let's see this, and get back to Gordon screaming at somebody, And a funny example of that is when I was with, of all people, Whoopi Goldberg, because she was at Hell's Kitchen. She goes, and she's a big fan of Gordon's. We went to an elimination and we saw the whole thing. And there's a moment where Gordon's yelling at the people. And what you see in the cut is, you fucked up the halibut. You fucked up the halibut. And it's like, it's fucked up the halibut reaction. You fucked up the halibut. But what he really said is, you fucked up the halibut. Now, granted, it's a thick, dense fish that took me forever to learn to cook right, because once it turns, it's dry like that. But you fucked up the halibut, right? So it's like, when you cut out what he actually says, you get this more salacious reality television type of moment. Well, and it's so interesting because, like, obviously there's so much more to Gordon Ramsay than just being a hellfire. Like, especially if you see him on the kids show, he's so much softer with them, and there's a lot that he's trying to teach. Is he okay with the kind of manipulation that they put? I mean, I'm sure his checks are okay with it, but is he okay with the kind of persona that they've really given him in editing? So because of MasterChef Junior, because of MasterChef, season 2 of Hell's Kitchen, we're sitting outside. We got everybody in the restaurant. He comes out for a break and he walks up and he goes, "Hayden." And I go, "Yeah." And I'm at this point, I don't really know him that well. Yeah. He goes, "Why does everybody think I'm an asshole?" And I go, "Because the way you're edited, right? Yeah. It's the way you're edited." And he goes, "Huh." He thought about it, and I knew his agent because they were there. I knew like the production company, and they were trying to do MasterChef, and they wanted to do Kids MasterChef by season 2 of Hell's Kitchen because they wanted to do a rebrand to soften him up a little bit. But that didn't happen until season 10. So wow. Season 10, because they go, it's a moneymaker, and between that and Kitchen Nightmares, they didn't want to soften him up before Kitchen Nightmares was done.
Wow. Jesus.
Yeah.
So he just held on to that persona just because it sold. That's wild.
It was huge. I mean, you'd get 2.5-3 million views per week, and that was
per yelling at people.
But the thing, the problem wasn't Hell's Kitchen. It wasn't Gordon. The problem was, you have a lot of, if you want to go on to a show like that, a competition reality show, there's a lot of people that they have a borderline narcissistic personality or a sociopath. And they have all got to pass a psych test before they ever get on the show. But after the show, I mean, there's several contestants have committed suicide and haven't been able to deal with any of that. So.
God, that's tough. So I think we have one other clip. Let's also be sure to open it up to questions. Let's get any other questions in. Let's show our last clip, and you can kind of give us any sort of insight into it as possible. It was another one you shared with us.
6 seasons of American Ninja Warrior, no woman has ever completed the qualifying course. Catanzaro looking to make history. Oh! Her fingers just grazed the top of the wall, missing by inches. This is it. Again, Vision 1 gymnast. She's used to performing when pressure's at its highest, and the pressure has never been higher than this moment.
She's only 5 feet tall. That means the warp wall is almost 3 times taller than her.
Utter silence in the crowd.
So from a viewer perspective, that very much seems like a sporting event with, the added nuance of the storytelling and anything. Is there more to it than that? Or, is this one of the more simpler ones you work on?
No. So the head of that company, A. Smith Productions, they also did Hell's Kitchen, they did and Kitchen Nightmares. They wanted that to feel more like the Olympics. It was originally on G4 and Spike TV, and it was done daytime, nighttime. And it was just like the way they did it in Japan. It was just literally quick bites, see what they can do, and then off they go. So Arthur Smith from May Smith was like, I want it more like the Olympics. I want the background packages that they do before the Olympic event so that you're emotionally invested, right? Mm-hmm. And then we want to do the sideline stuff. We want to do all of that. The show went to NBC on, I think it was season 4, because they used to share, they did all the night stuff on NBC and all the day stuff on G4. Once they went to NBC, NBC eventually bought it out and wanted to make it a bigger thing. But that was season 5 or 6. I can't remember which. And that season, they were kind of on the ropes. They didn't know what was going to happen. That moment with Casey Catanzaro, I think, in my mind, not just because it's my episode, but it was in my mind, was a turning point, because where it hit in where we were culturally, that episode, like, we won that night in ratings. We got, I think, close to 3 million views. But that clip alone, her whole run, got something like 12 million views on YouTube that week. And that was where YouTube and the social aspect kind of blew up. And the show just really went nuts from there. And then we had all these other female competitors. And it just became this whole thing where the women started doing better. They had to start changing the warped wall. They made it 2 feet tall or taller. They did all kinds of stuff just because people started figuring it out, know. But it really, that was a pop culture moment for that show.
So I mean, you touched on it a little bit, is like YouTube and social media in that aspect. How much has new media, social media, crept into your productions? Have you kept it pretty isolated, or are you doing stuff geared towards that?
No, we do that. We don't try to pull the social content. We go out to tell stories, and now that you can actually take segments and put them on social, it's changed a lot of things. What has changed the most is if it's a new show and you want a new host, what eyeballs do hosts bring to the table? Right. So it's not just some guy coming out that's a food expert. It might be somebody that's got 7 million followers on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. So they want guaranteed eyeballs for a show, because that's not where the shows really live. Like, it's the social moments that get people talking. People that are sitting home and actually watching the shows are older and they're not on social. But if you get whoever's home watching and the eyeballs from social, then they're going to take a bigger chance. And that's what I've seen, is there's more people that are not as qualified or experts in their field, but because they have huge social followings, they are given chances to be on TV.
Mm-hmm. And how do those chances pan out?
I mean, I did a show last summer with Dame Drops from YouTube. He's got Burger King commercials. Yeah. We did Fresh Fried and Crispy from Netflix. We got 1 season out of it. We've been put up this year for 9 categories for Emmy consideration. It was not nomination, but it didn't get renewed because it was a one-trick pony. He said the same stuff. Oh man, that hits different. That is what it is. And then you're like, okay, I've seen this. By episode, it came out of the gate hot for Netflix. There was, I think, 5 million views in the first week, but the average viewer didn't make it past. They didn't make it past, I think, episode 4. Then it dropped to 700,000.
Wow.
And then it just sort of fell off. But by the end of last year, somehow people found it, and it ended up being one of the most binged shows on Netflix. So he didn't carry, but then eventually people find it. So I don't really know how to judge that because I didn't think he was an amazing host. I thought he had funny moments. I think he had, and we did some really cool things the way we shot it. We shot with the Phantom camera, and we created an entire, for every single dish that was their hero dish for the segment.
Yeah.
We spent $90,000 to create a completely clear frying pan so that we could film camera right on the lens to see everything frying inside it. And with the Phantom camera. So,
all right. Well, I know what I'm going to tune into for a little bit after this.
Yeah. I mean, the food looks amazing. I mean, it was cool, but it just wasn't like, I wasn't connected to the host. Like, I was like, well, I'm really bored even watching it because he's doing his shtick,
Yeah, it's such an interesting dichotomy of the type of stuff that can get you a massive following on any of these social media applications, but then when you convert it into a more kind of storytelling diversity, like any different skill sets, it seems like it would really kind of crumble. So this is kind of like a two-part question. We're getting it from two different places. You talked about how quickly you can crank out these shows. Are the networks asking for more and more with a smaller crew, lower budgets, tighter turnarounds? And what are you on a hard 10-day, or are you like, we have 2 days to do this, everybody's all in, they know the restrictions, or are you having to deal with overtime and everything?
Oh, we have overtime.
Yeah.
So we do I try not to go into overtime. If I can't get it in a 12-hour day, then there's something wrong with me getting the story. It's not fair to a crew. It's not fair to like bust people's ass. And if I'm not going to have people shoot just to shoot to fill 12 hours. To answer your first part of your question, cable shows are getting cheaper. Anything owned by Discovery is getting considerably cheaper. Mm-hmm. The other end of that is the streamers are paying considerably more money. Wow. Right? So they're willing to pay for everything. So like when I do the Netflix show, we traveled, I can't remember. It's like this, it could have been the same crew that I did Bizarre. If I had my crew that I do Zimmerless, Bizarre Foods, all those with, we could have cranked those out in 8-hour days, had a great looking show, had a lot of fun, and everybody would have had the night off to go have drinks or get in trouble or whatever. On these shows, like the one I just did, I mean, we had one 14-hour day because it was a pilot. But everybody got I think they, with the pre-light and whatever, they got, ended up getting 14 hours of OT. So, which is fine. I mean, they get a good rate, they get OT, we get travel days. The thing about doing food shows is you never spend your per diem because everybody feeds you everywhere you go. And it doesn't cost anything. Like by the time we have crew meal, nobody wants to eat.
Yeah.
We've been fed all day. But all of our shows, we budget for a 12-hour day. If I do a union soundstage show, we were doing 8.5 with an hour, with a lunch. Because it's just to be a union show and have, 75 people running around, we're going to get it in 8-hour days. Mm-hmm. As producers, directors, I mean, I'm on a flat, that's just the way my world works. Yeah. I'm on a flat because I'm answering phones. I'm dealing with the production company, but we make sure that I want our crew taken care of. Like it's not fair to them. And there's times day rates, like if there is a long day or we're doing a travel shoot day and we have to get the content, we're going to have OT. But there's a lot of times like Bizarre Foods, we might have a 14-hour day. And then we would have 3 hours of driving between shoots. So 14 of the hours, you still get OT and you've been in the car for 3 hours taking a nap, So, I see somebody else is asking, anybody else on a flat? I'm on a flat, production managers on a flat. And if a writer goes in the field, they don't go in the field with me, but on some of the other shows with the other directors, they do. Then they would be on a flat.
So, I mean, obviously, when you're doing these shows, like you were talking about, one of the bonuses, crew gets fed, like all that sort of stuff. But also a lot of the other stuff, you're experiencing all the stuff you're shooting, whether it's food related, whether it's, crime related or travel or any number of different things. What are some of the experiences that you've been most grateful for that you've been able to get through the wide world of television?
Exposure to so many different people and cultures. I mean, hands down. I've gotten to do things that most people wouldn't, we did the Pony Express episode in Bizarre Foods, and on Easter morning, Andrew Zimmer, my cameraman, got to stand in the North Church in Boston where they hung the 2 lanterns for Paul Revere. Actually, the lanterns are the old lanterns. I mean, there are no candles anymore. We're up there. We got to climb to the top and look out over Boston. And it's like those moments of history where you're like, I'm someplace that most people will never go, I've worked with indigenous people all around the country, and to be invited in for powwows or sage dances, or to be fed, to be, they always want to bless you and share something with you. I was given a really, really old bead necklace that from this 90-year-old Native American woman, indigenous, first people in Florida, that they can trace back their lineage and their connection to that land 10,000 years.
Wow.
And they gave me a bead thing because they just felt like we were giving them the opportunity to tell their story.
Wow.
That's awesome. Things like that. It's just, you got to be humble, because it's like, if I'm not forcing a story and somebody feels comfortable enough to tell their story, it just opens so many doors.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's just one of the great advantages, and I think draws of our careers, our, profession, is being able to experience all that stuff along with telling the story.
And we're storytellers, and it adds to our own story.
Yeah. So Steve chimed in here with another question: is what's opposite of that? What's one of the worst days you've had on set?
Make everybody feel better about having a tough production day, Hayden. Give us a good story.
I mean, I can tell you, there's been some really, really long days. Like Hell's Kitchen, there were days where I'd have to be at set at 3 a.m. I didn't leave until midnight, things like that, because those are the kind of things. It's a one-day shoot, and you just have to get through it. And there is no we can do it or push it till later. Like, there were moments like that. There were days. I mean, there are days where we were on Kitchen Nightmares, and we've developed this whole idea of what the story is and who we're going to interview, and somebody's the head chef didn't show up. It's docu-follow. If this head chef doesn't show up, how are you going to tell that story? How are you going to do the interviews? Like, where is this guy? And the kind of thing that's terrible is, found out he got arrested for potentially raping a woman the night before. And it's like things like that where you have no control, and now your entire day and entire story and all the money you spent is shot. This pilot that I just finished, I just got home from last night. 2 weeks ago, I flew out to do it. There was a contract problem with the production company. After spending an entire day there, they called me the next morning, the day that the rest of the crew was supposed to come in, because I was on a scout, and they said, "Hey, we're pulling you." So now I've got the family that I've just got to know. We have to leave, and they think it's something that they did wrong, right?
Wow.
So I came back home, and the thing that I did is like, I'm not going to tell them. I need somebody from the office to call them and give them this news, so that they don't think that we looked around, got there after a day, and go, "Nope, they're not good enough." Mm-hmm. Right? So it's like things like that are the really bad things. I've been lucky enough to not have something go completely haywire on me. But there are moments like that do creep in.
Mm-hmm. Besides skill sets, what's something that, besides your phone, laptop, communication device, what's another valuable tool as a producer?
A crew that feels like family. Mm-hmm. People that you want to be with, people that want to be like-minded storytellers. Once we get going, we create the call sheet. I create it. I give it to the production manager. He puts it on, distro. I don't care what's on that call sheet. It's as soon as we start, if the story changes, we follow it. But if we have a crew and people that just enjoy being together, it translates to our work, because then the families feel that they have been empowered. They feel like they're telling their story, and I say families because that's what I've been doing recently, but any contestant, anybody where they feel like they're part of the experience and not being poked and prodded to say what they want to say. That's where I think I could care less about the phone or the computer or what we were scheduled to do. We'll problem solve. If we have to figure out if a camera goes down, we'll grab an A7S or an A7R or whatever is in our bag. Like sometimes we'll have an extra Fuji X-T3 that we used to use for food porn, or Panasonic GH5 or whatever it is. Like, we will problem solve. And I think people that problem solve, laugh, and don't get upset. I think that's the big takeaway. People that you want to work with, because we're all storytellers.
Well, and plus, just from talking with you for this, hour, 15 minutes, I think you have a passion, a compassion, and a joy in what you do. And that easily translates to anybody that you're trying to tell their story with. It just makes the entire process better.
Right. Well, so what my biggest thing is, so I've done 32 episodes of Family Dinner in a year and a half. And that show, 31 out of 32 families, somebody in that family cried telling me their story and was that emotionally connected to what we were asking and felt comfortable to do it. 30 out of those 32 wrote letters back to the production company to talk about what an amazing experience it was.
Wow.
And how they felt so comfortable, and that the whole thing, like, we are a part of their life story now moving forward because they had such an amazing experience. And then when they see the show, they write in again to say, you got us exactly right. And for me, I couldn't be more proud of that type of storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because I'm like it's the complete opposite of what you're talking about with Undercover Boss of, being completely manipulated. This is the opposite end of the spectrum of like, wow, you're telling my story to a national audience. It's amazing.
Right. Well, Undercover Boss, the manipulation though was to get them to a place where we could help them, which is so it's almost like an intervention. Like a perfect example, when I go back to the valet manager at Mohegan Sun, we did that episode, and I knew that the woman that we filmed with had it rough. Like, I knew it was rough. I knew they were really tight on money. She was a good worker. She did her thing. I think we paid for a management training school for her. We gave her, I think, $30,000 or $40,000. And then in that interview, she came up, and that's where she really let loose. And she goes, "Thank you so much." She goes, and she just starts bawling. And she goes, "You don't know what you just did." And I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I don't have to heat water on the stove to give my baby a warm bath now."
Wow.
And it's like they didn't have their heat pump went out, or their water heater went out, and they were having to boil water on a stove. Like, that blows me away.
Wow.
So
it'll be a hard shift. And again, you had mentioned it before, but Bizarre Foods is really kind of an oversimplification of, the type of foods and the type of culinary experiences that you're having. We're going to show a clip because you sent it to us. But you could talk a little bit about some of the culinary experiences that you've had, from crazy to delicious or anything like that.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's great to have you on the show. There's always a first for everyone. What do you think? A little springy?
It's like an egg.
Not bad though, right?
I see that you didn't chew yours up.
They're poisonous.
Okay.
Medic!
So how did it taste? And tell us a little bit about some of the other crazy stuff that you've been able to experience.
Well, so here's the funny story. Andrew, that was my initiation. That was my first episode on the show, directing it. And I always heard, like, Andrew's going to get you with something, right? Mm-hmm. He goes, that's what he does. He's make sure that he kind of hazes everybody by eating whatever we're doing. So I'm calling camera, and I see it. I'm like, hey, I don't know where he's going. A cam, stay with him. B cam, loop it back around just so we can get a long lens of whatever this is. Like, I have no idea where he's going. And then I look up, and I'm look back down on my monitor. I look up, and I just go, scratch that. He's coming to me. And he walks over with the turtle egg. And that was my initiation to Bizarre Foods. He made me eat the turtle egg. Well, it had been in fresh water for 2 days. So actually, and it was it was so early in the development that it hadn't got a hard case around it at that point. Mm-hmm. So when he pulled the yolks out, he came over, we had it. It tasted just like a regular egg yolk. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's my experience from Bizarre Foods. Is most of the foods that they want to say is bizarre is, if you're with the culture that cooks them, they are delicious. Like, that's just what it is. It's like, it's just, you think of it as something gross because mentally that's what you think, but almost every single thing I ate was amazing. I'm not a fan of kidneys, just not, but anything else, I'll try it.
Like you said, the budget differentiation between Discovery, who, 10 years ago you would think would be the main powerhouse for this reality television, and the big budgets would be there, and then Netflix would be, the skimmer ones. that's shifting. Where do you see the landscape of reality television?
All the streamers, the Paramount Plus, all that big stuff is going to spend more money. They're always going to try to get cheaper. I mean, they just are. But like Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu have all said that they want to have a living standard and wage. So they're trying. If you work for Netflix, if you are on the road for a week, you're guaranteed 2 days off. I mean, when I was working at Fox doing Kitchen Nightmares, 10 years ago, I did 28 days in a row. Like when I was on the Family Dinner show last summer, because of COVID and because they were trying to cram through it, I did 7 episodes in 17 days. So, and that's, the only person that gets screwed on that is me. Like all the camera guys, the ACs, everybody, sound, they all get their full rates every day, and plus a 7th day. I would get screwed because normally I'd have a week of prep and then go on the road for 5 days. And to knock them all out like that, that's the problem with being on a flat rate.
Now, there's been constant, horror stories from LA and the productions of film production, television production, stuff like that. Do you think the atmosphere and, like you said, the work-life balance in reality is a little better, or it's getting better, or where do you kind of see that on the grand scale of things?
It depends on the budget. It depends on how much the production company's taken off the top of their fee, and whether they want to put the money on screen or not. Honestly, that's what it comes down to. When I do a commercial, like I'll get paid more for doing one day on a commercial. Yeah. And honestly, commercials a lot of times are harder because you have the client being a pain in the ass that just wants to be on, YouTube watching other crap, not paying attention. And you have to get all this extra gear. You bring it all out like a yard sale because they want to seem like they've been catered to with all the stuff, the gear you don't need, shiny boards and C-stands, like you just kind of litter it around so they feel like they're getting their money's worth,
Well, then you're 4 shots down the shot list and they want to revisit something that you moved on from.
Right. And the thing for my world, because we're able to do things really efficiently, to them, they're like, wait, what? Like, we're done? Yeah. So, but once you turn it in, they're like, oh, okay. Right. Like, so.
Cool. Well, at the very end of this, is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to add, wanted to share, or did we just wear you out?
Yeah, you're not going to wear me out.
I didn't think so.
But you know what, though? No, every single person that's on here that wants to connect, please connect. I'm dead serious. Like, I am happy to in any way help other people. I think we should all be rooting for each other. We should be looking for ways to bring productions to Wisconsin. Like, we have this great state with some talented people, and it's something that if we work our ass off, then, maybe we can get some of the films and get local hires here,
Well, I don't think I could end it any better than that. Thanks so much for joining us for an hour and a half of tons of information, Hayden. I appreciate all of the insight and your time and everything that you shared with us. It's greatly appreciated.
We'll see you in 5 years.
Yeah, I'll do it again whenever. And if anybody's heard any of this before, I apologize.
No way, man. It's always great.
No, that's great. We'll sign off on that note. Thanks so much for your time, Hayden.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Cool. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Hayden.
All right.